While visiting a friend in September 1984, 17-year-old Kurt McFall was found dead at the base of a cliff. To this day, questions regarding how Kurt McFall died continues to linger. Was he murdered? Was it a tragic accident? Were the cans of beer that was found near his car, was that a sign that he was murdered? Could have been that he went to climb a cliff in the middle of the night and he basically did not grab something correctly, and he ultimately sadly fell to his death. This case is also further compounded by reports that apparently the association that Kurt was a part of, the creative acronym for, what is it called again? Hold on, let me check. Creative acronym. Let's see here. Hold on, let me check. There it goes. The Society for Creative Acronym, also known as the SCA. It's being reported via third parties that possibly members of this association wanted to kill Kurt. Ultimately, as I always say, it's not up to me to tell you what to think. I'm going to play a video. I'm going to give you my thoughts. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, you will have your thoughts. But this is a deeply entwining case, full of twists and turns. Could it have been that simply there was an accident and that cost him his life? Or does his death hide something more serious? Okay, let's get on with it. So let's pull up the video. Hold on. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Oh, I forgot to change the audio. Sorry, guys. When I'm editing and everything in between these videos, I have to switch the audio so I can actually hear it without having the headphones on. So let's try again.
On Saturday, September 8th, 1984, a teenage boy drove from his home in Concord, California, across the Bay Bridge into San Francisco. He'd planned to spend the night and return home Sunday evening. Monday, September...
Now, I do drive. I drive, but I'll be honest, I'm not much of a driver. I have a massive debilitating fear when it comes to driving. I prefer to drive either when it's early and there's nobody out driving around, or late at night and nobody's out driving around. I just have a debilitating fear when it really comes to driving during the afternoon hours. I'll do it, but if it's only like short distances, it's just the thought of literally everybody being around me when I'm driving, that just makes me panic, So the thought of driving that far, like how Kurt drove here, that just has me like, oh God, I don't think I can do that, I would actually be more willing to use the BART system to go, large distances in California. And the BART system is actually a reference to the Unsolved Mysteries Season 1, Episode 1, case number, I think it's case number 5, that I covered just a little bit ago. I'm going to put that in the description, or right there in the corner, so you guys can see it if you would like. So let's get back to this video, shall we?
10th, 3 days later. On some rugged cliffs in a remote area of San Francisco Bay, 2 men were birdwatching. On the isolated beach below, they discovered the bruised, half-naked body of 17-year-old Kurt McFall. His father suspects foul play.
Some of these cases always makes you wonder what, what are the odds that, they would actually find something? You have like these guys here, they were bird watching, or there was a case, oh God, I can't recall what the name of it was, where a girl, she disappeared. She thought she was dying going to die when she was 16, and she actually survived beyond 16, but she ended up dying like few months later. A guy was actually walking in the desert when he found her body. It makes me like, what are the odds that you could be doing something and boom, you just come across a dead body? Yeah.
Kurt told this friend of his that he was involved in some kind of satanic cult and that he wanted out.
Ah, yes. The case of satanic panic. To those who do not know, because you may be a little bit younger if you're just coming across Unsolved Mysteries now, satanic panic was basically during the 1980s when everything that was seen as morally corrupt, I guess you could say, it was bad. It was bad. You like certain types of music, bad. You like certain types of movies, bad. Literature, bad. It's like it's something that gripped the United States during the 80s. And this isn't the first time that I'm going to mention Satanic Panic. There was also a time during, I think it was the Son of Sam case on Unsolved Mysteries, where they allude to Satanic Panic.
But thought that they might try to kill him. And he really feared for his life. It was a murder. It needs to be investigated. There's no doubt in my mind that Kurt could have handled himself in that cliff area.
This is the one thing that I always I feel for Kurt's father. I do. I feel bad for the guy. I feel bad for the guy. But I think sometimes we do not want to acknowledge either suicide or accident, and we have to try to justify it as murder because we just think that the person who dies, that they were accomplished at something. Like Kurt McFall, I think they said that he was like an accomplished swimmer or climber or something. That because that they were accomplished at something, they can't die because of that. And I'm sorry, I don't see it like that. I just do not see it like that. Just because you're proficient at something doesn't mean you're always going to be protected. How many times have we ever heard of of swimmers who are good with good at swimming, that they end up dying while they're swimming? Like say they're going to rescue somebody, or that they're just swimming and they get towed under by an undercurrent or whatever. I think that we always try to turn to murder when somebody dies, especially in unknown circumstances. I think we turn to that as a way to try to help us understand, if that makes any sense. It's easier to understand somebody brutally murdering somebody than it is that your son or daughter who was proficient at something and they died doing that thing. I think that's just me. Ultimately, we're each different people. You may think you have your own opinion about it, and I welcome that. I do welcome that.
Because he was an experienced mountain climber and he was a diver. So he would not have drowned in the water or fallen down the hill.
I'm sorry, dude. I just cannot buy that. I cannot buy that at all.
Kurt McFall, dead at 17. To outward appearances, Kurt was a handsome and popular high school student, a confident young man who made friends easily.
Tom McFall has learned there was another side to his teenage son. The day after Kurt disappeared, Tom received an anonymous telephone call telling him that his son had wanted to escape from a cult and that he feared for his life.
Okay, if watching this video along with the other videos I've released so far in this series has taught you anything, it should teach you that I do not believe anything that comes as second hand or third hand knowledge or second hand knowledge, whatever you say, whatever the correct term is, especially when it comes from strangers on the phone. Well, I think it is. Now, my opinion, this is just my opinion. I think that somebody who may have not liked her, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, not everybody is universally liked. Not everybody is universally liked. Hell, I have my own share of haters when it comes to my thoughts on unsolved mysteries. I do not deny that at all. I believe that, I believe that, you know, that's the fact, So with that said, I think what I think happened is I think that Kurt may have had either a bully or an enemy or something. This may not be the person that killed Kurt if Kurt was killed, but just somebody who did not like Kurt. They knew that their father, that his father was having a difficult time because his son was just found dead, and they decided, you know what, I'm going to take a knife and I'm just going to dig it in a little bit more. I'm just going to dig it in a little bit more. And they reached out to his dad and they basically said, hey, Kurt was trying to escape a cult and that basically he was murdered. Because of this interaction, it could have set Kurt's father off on a path where he now thinks that his son was murdered. It's I'm not even sure what the correct term is, but basically they just by putting this little thought in this guy's head, it literally caused him to forever be on this kind of course now where he thinks that his son was murdered. That nothing else will actually could be the answer, that this murder was what happened to his son.
Tom now believes that Kurt strayed from a suburban middle-class background into a world of witchcraft, mysticism, and possibly murder.
I literally feel for Kurt's father in this case. When my mom died a few years ago, and the first thing I wanted to believe was that she died of a heart attack. That was already known. She died of a heart attack. Me, though, because I found her, I knew that she wasn't murdered because I found her and everything. I was so adamant on believing that it was COVID that killed her. It was COVID that killed her. And you're wondering, why do you think it was COVID, Jeff? And the thing was, my mom, before she passed away, she worked in a factory. And during the time she passed away, this was when COVID was still going around. It was towards the end of it, but it was still going around. We still had all the stupid mask requirements and all that shit. My mom, she did everything possible to not contract COVID. She bought, really high grade masks, and she actually stayed away from people as much as she could when she would eat. She was really careful. And the reason I just thought it was COVID was because she was so adamant, on being safe. I figured that it would be some cruel twist of fucking irony that my mom, who tried to stay healthy and everything, and she ended up dying due to COVID. Actually, it was not that at all. It was actually she just had a heart attack. She had a heart. She cared for a lot of people. She cared for almost all the people she knew. Ultimately, she had a big heart and it just gave out. But for me, that's my mindset. I was thinking, and I was hoping that I could, I was hoping that it was COVID. That way I could really just hate COVID even more. Not only, my opinion was, not only did COVID it cost me a couple months of my job because we were all put on furloughs at the time. You know, I hate COVID because of that. But then, I just wanted another reason to hate COVID because, it took my mom also, I hate it even more. That wasn't the case. But yeah, I remember the first few months after my mom died, and those months were fucking hard. Those were the hardest months that I have ever had, to be honest. When my mom was alive, me and her shared an apartment. In fact, my mom, even though she worked, she did not, like, even though she worked, I provided everything for her. Everything she earned was basically her spending money. I made sure she was taken care of. After my mom died, I closed off her bedroom. Basically, the way that bedroom was, with the exception of some stuff that I took out shortly after she passed away, with the help of my friend Aaron. After I closed that room up, that room stayed closed from October. I think it was like October 15th, October 16th, all the way until like April of the following year. It was closed off. I mean, I could not I did not have the courage to go into that room. I could not do it. I would come home, and it's like where I live now. It's like literally, it would be like I lived in a one bedroom home at that point. Even though I had two bedrooms, I could not open up that door. I could not open up that door until April the following year. Then I was able to go in there for the first time since I closed that door. And oh my God, you would not believe how odd it is to go into a room that it's there, but something so tragic happened. It's like it became its own universe. So I can understand that's what Kurt's father was like going into his bedroom.
Alarmed by the strange phone call, Tom searched his son's bedroom.
After I had received the telephone call, I thought a lot about this individual as to what he knew about Kurt's disappearance. I wanted to gain all the information I could as to what happened.
In Kurt's room, Tom discovered a knife made from a deer's hoof, a necklace of stone and feathers, and drawings of witchcraft and violent fantasies. These seem to be further proof that Kurt...
Now, you also got to remember, this was recorded in the 1980s. Basically, things have changed. What it was seen as possibly violent fantasies back then would be seen as like just kind of normal drawings now.
Kurt was leading a double life. At 10, he'd become interested in a medieval fantasy game, Dungeons and Dragons. It was the beginning of a voyage into a subculture that would dominate Kurt. A year before he died, Kurt joined the Society for Creative Anachronism, or SCA.
I actually have a co-worker where I work. He is actually a member of the SCA, if I remember correctly. There's different branches of SCA, but in Longview, I think there's a branch in Longview that he is a member of. That they go and they participate in medieval functions and everything throughout the year and whatnot. So I showed my co-worker this video before, or I told him about it, and he honestly wasn't that shocked. Apparently, the SCA, according to him, has been known for having issues like this.
Its members enjoy reliving medieval customs and the actual costumes of the period. Once a week, they practice jousting and sword fighting in the parking lot of an Oakland subway station.
Kurt was here.
I'm sorry. I just can't help but think. Can you imagine what it'd be like? You're a visitor to San Diego. I think that's what they said, or San Francisco, whatever. And you're a visitor, and you're coming out of the subway. You're looking at the parking lot, and you see people dressed up in medieval gear having fun. I'd be like, wow, what the hell is going on? I wouldn't be upset or anything. It's just like, wow, that's something I would not be expecting. You know, you'd be expecting possibly hearing somebody like playing on a guitar or something, you know, or reading poetry. But medieval practice, you know, it's just something I would not expect to find in a Subway's parking lot.
Here about twice a week through February and into March of '84. Learned how to fight. He was good, quick, talented. Really going to be very good at the game. We were real pleased with him. And his death certainly had nothing to do with any part of his participation in the SCA that I knew anything about.
That she knows about. Just because she doesn't know anything about it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Like I said, I tried to give you the tools and you have to make the decision. I don't think anything that happened to Kurt was due to the SCA. I think what it was, I honestly think that it was a simple accident. That's what I think it was.
As Kurt became increasingly interested in medieval rituals, he joined a separate group who initiated him into pagan religion. One of Kurt's old high school friends feared this new group and contacted Tom McFall. He'd become concerned for Kurt and now fears for his own safety.
Just because a person joins a group that you disagree with doesn't mean that the group's actually violent. It could be just now. I know here is something that is going to blow your mind. Not everything you disagree with is actually a bad thing. Granted, there are bad groups, for example, out there, but just because somebody joins, like, say, a pagan group or whatever, it doesn't mean that group is actually evil. It just doesn't.
Gradually, over a period of perhaps 6 months, his attitude towards other people changed drastically. He kind of moved from just studying with an interest in medieval religion to actually adopting that religion as his.
So he adopted it. It doesn't mean he's a bad person. If anything, it may mean that you're a little bit unaccepting, you know? You know, it's kind of sad that if we don't understand what a person does, and 99% of the time that, you know, unless if it's something like terribly wrong. Let's say you have a best friend. You have a best friend, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they decide to start hanging out with members of the KKK, for example. Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. But then there are other groups. Let's say you have a friend and they decide that they wanted to join the SCA, for example, you know. It doesn't mean that they are a bad person. Maybe they're just wanting to, you know, just to experience new things. Me, I am a severe, with the exception of when I'm at work. When I'm off the clock and I'm home, I am a severe loner. There are times that I would like to go out and talk to people and have conversations, but I'm just too afraid to. Does that make me a bad person because I want to talk to people even though I'm a loner? If I had another friend who was also a loner, like we only interacted with each other, and I decided that I'm going to go out and start trying to spread my wings, does that make me a bad person?
He lost a lot of his friends through that process.
If you lose a lot of your friends because you decide to do something different, and let's say he wasn't even mean to his friends. I don't know because I'm not there. Well, let's say he was still nice to his friends, but because he decided to do something that was against the societal norms for his group of friends, and they're like, you know what, Kurt, we got to take a vote, guys. We got to take a vote. Kurt is liking playing in armor. He's liking hanging out in the subway, you know, parking lot playing make-believe with these other guys. Maybe it's time we drop Kurt. Maybe it's time we drop Kurt. If they do that, then honestly, they were not really much of a friend to begin with. Real friends want to encourage their friends to do things that make them happy. Real friends don't want their friends to stagnate and basically become hollow husk. Hollow husks. I'm sorry if you hear an alarm in the background. Somebody's car alarm is going off. Okay, now, if I was to really, really speak out about anybody, it would be the guy here. God, I can't recall what his name is. They're going to say what his name is pretty quickly, because of the fact that he was the guy who was basically who last saw Kurt McFall before he passed away.
Kurt studied pagan religion with Gabriel Carrillo, who uses the ancient Welsh name Caradoc.
This is a religion which is also an art.
Now, before anybody says anything, I even though I said I'm, kind of basically kind of pointing a finger at him, it isn't so much because I think Kurt was killed. No, it's just because if you look at it from like a law perspective, I guess you could really say, if you look at it from the way the law is, they look at the people who either was, closest to Kurt, like say family, or people who last saw Kurt. I'm not just pointing at the Karadic because he did it. Granted, the guy, he's, he may have a weird hairdo, but then again, look at me. But I don't think he killed the guy. He may be weird, but he didn't do it.
Craft, which has techniques which are at their essence magical. I met Kurt because he had evinced an interest in magic. Kurt was real bright and real curious about just about everything.
His involvement with this group can be compared to a drug addiction, where you begin thinking that you've got it in control and you can take it when you want, but gradually losing that sense of knowing when to stop until you're a junkie.
We regard evil as a human phenomenon. I do not make any attempt to control people's lives.
And I believe it. I think this guy was just somebody that, somebody for people to kind of like hang out with. Do I view this guy as a David Koresh type person? No, I don't. I don't think that this is a Heaven's Gate kind of leader, I think that this is just a guy who basically participated in this sort of lifestyle, and that's what Kurt was looking for at the time.
People are free to come and go at their own discretion, just as Kurt did. If anything, the emphasis that we have is on individuals taking control of their own lives.
Saturday, September 10th. Kurt had planned to spend the night at Karadic's apartment. They had dinner, went to a movie, and around midnight, Kurt went swimming at Ocean Beach, a few blocks from Karadic's home.
That was the first mistake that Kurt did. You don't go swimming, especially in the ocean or in the beach or whatever you want to call it, when it's night. If you want to go swimming and it's night, go to a nicely lit pool. There's just too many variables. God, I can't pronounce it. There's too many things that could happen if you go swimming in the ocean at nighttime. It doesn't matter if you are a pro or not. There are just too many different things. There's undertows. There's oh god, tides. I don't understand this whole reason why Kurt McFall, who I think that his dad said, I can't recall if it was his dad said that he was an expert swimmer or an expert climber. It could have been both. But somebody who is an expert at swimming, for example, they should know that it is dangerous to go swimming at night in the ocean. No, I don't even swim. And I could tell you that, it's like, what the fuck are you thinking? What the fuck are you thinking?
Later, Kurt was restless and couldn't sleep. According to Karadic, Kurt knocked on his door about 3 in the morning.
It's too hot in here. I'm going to the beach.
Kurt was never seen again.
My best guess is simply that he took one too many chances. He might have gone swimming in the ocean and been pulled out by the undertow. He might have gone climbing on the cliffs at Land's End and slipped and fallen, or any one of a number of other things.
The following evening, Kurt's car was found, abandoned on a golf course overlooking the ocean. There were a number of puzzling clues. Kurt's driver's license was on the floor. His car keys were on the seat. A $20 bill was in the glove compartment.
Okay, so clearly it wasn't robbery. It clearly was not robbery. Because it's going to be revealed that there were cans of beer or alcohol, or what do you want to call it, around the car. If that's the case, then that means, and Kurt's father, I think Kurt's father goes out on record and says that Kurt did not drink. Okay, so let's say his father is telling the truth. Kurt did not drink. The amount of beer cans there indicates that possibly either one person was there that killed Kurt, and it was over, that this happened, that he was there for quite a while for that amount of cans to be there. If that's the case, he would have had time to possibly search the vehicle. The fact that Kurt's keys were in the vehicle, the ID was on the floor of the vehicle, I think they said. That means that he could have gone through Kurt's his wallet. That he went through his wallet and he didn't find anything. Odds are that he probably searched that vehicle. If it was robbery, they would have taken the $20. But since the $20 was not taken, I cannot help but think that this was not a robbery, and I still don't think it was murder. I think it was suicide. And for the beer, I think that it was simply that maybe Kurt, he figured that he was far enough away from Dad that he would have a few drinks, he would sober up, and then return home, and Dad would never know. Maybe him going to Karadic's place, not only to see a friend, was also his way of trying to sneak, getting some alcohol, for example. Something that a lot of parents don't want to acknowledge is that their kids will do things behind their back. Oh no, my kid, he never smokes. Your kid will go to his friend's house when his friend's parents are not there and smoke. If you tell your kid not to do something, they're going to do it. They will do it. If Kurt's dad told him not to drink, not to smoke, he's going to do it because he wants to see what it's about. He wants to understand why it is that he was told no, that he can't do something.
The prize suit of armor which Kurt had made for his SCA sword fighting was missing from the trunk. Most curious of all, there were beer bottles scattered
Beer bottles, my bad. I thought it was beer cans.
in and around the car.
The car has to be a phony scene. To me, that was set up because Kurt did not drink beer. That's also inconsistent with the autopsy report that shows that there was no signs of alcohol or drugs on the body when it was recovered.
Okay, depending on how soon it was that if Kurt was alive, let's say Kurt was alive for a few hours or a day or whatever before he was found dead. I can't recall exactly what the time frame was, but if he was alive for a while before he died, it could have gone out of his system. And like I said, this goes back to what the father said. Oh, Kurt didn't drink. Just because your son or your daughter does not do something at home, it does not mean that they will not do it elsewhere. I was a teenager. I remember what it was like to be a teenager. You tell us not to do something, and we're going to do it. For me, the worst thing that I ever did was I had a little bit of a drink. It wasn't that much, but I had a little bit of a drink, and I did not like it. The only other time I ever really had a drink was on my 21st birthday. but you tell somebody no, they can't, and they will. It's human nature to basically rebel against what you're being told not to do.
So that looks very suspicious.
And regarding the whole content of alcohol, let's say he fell. Let's say he was at the golf course. He was inebriated. He was drunk. Let's say that he started to climb down the cliff down to the beach, because the beach was at the base of the cliff. Let's say he fell, but he was still alive. He got pulled out into the water via tide. Let's say he hit the ground. He was unable to move, but he remained alive. He was still out. The water came in, pulled him out, because they said they found, I think they found gashes or cuts or abrasions. I think the word was abrasions on his body. The tide put him back in, but during that time he was out in the water, he was still alive. He was in the water for so long, maybe a few hours, however long it takes for alcohol to pass through the body. And then he's brought back, but by the time he's brought back, he is just barely alive enough, and then he passed away. Then the evidence of the alcohol could have been gone by that point.
At 10:15 the following morning, National Park Service lifeguards recovered the body of Kurt McFall. It was lying in a cove less than 2 miles from Karadic's apartment, just below the cliffs at the golf course where Kurt's car was found.
When we came upon the body, we noticed it was in fairly good condition, fairly pale, usually a sign of being in the water for an extended period of time. No obvious external trauma. He looked pretty clean other than a few small abrasions on the body, but nothing obvious.
Kurt's body had no shoes, socks, or shirt. His back and shoulders were scored with cuts and abrasions, and strangely, the belt he wore was missing its buckle.
With the facts that we have in this case, it's really anybody's guess as to where he actually entered the water, where he came from.
Well, where he entered the water could have been near where his car was. The only thing I cannot understand is how he could have washed up at the same spot. Because of the fact that if you're pulled out into the water, it's not gonna, at least the way I understand it, it's not gonna spit you up and then just, suck you in and then spit you out right at the same spot you were. It's not like a UFO, basically. It's not like it's gonna pick you up and then drop you exactly where it picked you up from. No. So I, if anything, I think that he could have fallen, from the cliff when he was climbing down the cliff. He lost his grip. He tumbled down the side of the cliff. That could explain the gashes on his body. And he was alive just long enough after he hit the ground where he could have remained conscious to the point, barely conscious, for long enough for his body to have processed the alcohol. And I don't think they mentioned or not, but if he urinated or something, maybe he urinated, but the tide came in and it was just enough water to wash out, the stuff without carrying the body.
My guess would be, and that's all it is an educated guess, that he simply fell off the cliff. And that's what it appears to me.
The coroner's report determined that Kurt died from multiple traumatic injuries and severe blood loss. But no one knows what caused those injuries. Kurt may have drowned, but that would not explain his cuts and abrasions or the acute loss.
Yeah, it would. If he drowned, let's say he was pulled out into the ocean by the tide, he could have been banged up on the rocks, either in the water itself, or if there were any rocks on the beach when he was being pulled out. I don't understand this whole, how could he get banged up? There's rocks on the beach. There's rocks on beaches. There's rocks in the ocean, but like I said, I don't understand how, I don't understand how he could have been pulled out and then brought back in and deposited in the same spot he was pulled out, because you would think that no matter what, it would put, he would move around in the ocean due to the tides and whatnot, or the currents. I cannot understand. I do not understand how he could have been picked up from that spot and then put right back.
Loss of blood. It appears that Kurt fell from the treacherous cliffs, but it is not known if he fell accidentally or if he was beaten and pushed.
I don't think he was being pushed. I don't even think he was murdered. I think it was just a tragic accident that possibly he was a little bit drunk, possibly, and he heard the water and he decided, I want to go for a swim, and not thinking properly because of the alcohol, he decided to try and climb down this cliff when it's nighttime. It was or early morning. Odds are it wasn't even light out enough yet, and that just makes a horrible recipe right there.
I went to the San Francisco coroner and I said, "What do you think happened to Kurt?" And he said, "I think the most probable cause of Kurt's death is homicide." But he said he didn't have enough to testify to that in a court of law, and so he sent it up to homicide, classified as unknown. And I can't accept that.
And I understand. I'm not upset at the father at all. He's trying to make sense out of something that was tragic, like it was for me. He's trying to get that understanding, and I totally understand. But sometimes, as a person who's looking, as an outsider looking in, that I have no dog in this race, I guess you could say, or horse in this race. I'm looking at what is presented, and sadly, sometimes either an accident or a suicide is just that. Sometimes just an accident or a suicide. Sometimes it's not murder, and like I said, people just try to think of the worst because it's easier for them to come to terms with somebody being murdered than it is that somebody they thought was proficient, for example, when it came to swimming or climbing cliffs. If they have an accident, it's harder for them to accept that because they view their child as being good at that.
The San Francisco police declined to be interviewed. They investigated Kurt's death but found no evidence to classify it as a homicide. The case remains open, but there are no suspects. Although he has no proof, Tom McFall still believes his son was murdered.
Kurt may have uncovered something in the organization and may have indicated to people that he was going to expose this. And I feel that all of these things probably contributed to them to wanting to do away with Kurt.
My personal theory is that Kurt stumbled onto some information that he wasn't supposed to know about.
Okay, now you can't really see it, but the person who's talking right here, he is in it's another silhouette. That is one thing that this show liked to do from time to time, was use people in silhouette. And I'm sorry, I cannot. When you're having to hide your identity, it just makes me kind of question it even more. Like question the person even more.
These types of organizations don't make threats. They make actions.
If I wanted to murder somebody, the last person I would murder was would be somebody who was staying at my house and whose father knew that he was staying at my house. I mean, the whole thing is stupid. I understand that Kurt's father went through a great deal of pain about his death and needed to find somebody to blame. And I understand that I was a very convenient person for him to blame. But I had absolutely no responsibility for Kurt's death.
Even though the guy, it's just me, he does seem a little bit guilty. Maybe it's just the way he's talking. I don't think he did it. He just, I think he's like a red herring, to be honest, if that's the right term. That's what I think. I think he's just a red herring. He seems guilty, but I don't think ultimately he is.
I'm so frustrated to have information that would indicate that your son has been murdered. And to date, they have virtually closed the case.
And here's the question I ask. It's like, even if, when would the father be ultimately, when would he be happy? When would he be happy? Because he believes that his son was murdered. He had that mysterious phone call, where he, was told that his son was killed. One of his friends, sounds like one of his friends told him that, he was afraid that he was going to die. Even if the police did a thorough investigation, let's say they did like a 3-year investigation, and they interviewed everybody, they took all the proof, evidence, and all that shit, and they were able to determine that, sadly, ultimately, at the end of the day, this was a tragic accident. Would Kurt's father would he be willing to accept that? Or because of the fact that he was told that his son was murdered, would he be unable to come to terms with that? And I hate to say it, I think that's what would happen. You could literally show him undebatable evidence that his son had a tragic accident, and I don't think he could actually accept that. I think that he would never be able to accept it, because ultimately, at the end of the day, he had that initial thought of his son being murdered put into his head, and that's all there is.
I am bound and determined to get an investigation. I think Kurt deserved this. He did not deserve it to be taken in that manner.
Currently, Tom McFall is the only person investigating his son's death. If Kurt was murdered, he hopes that even now, 3 years later, someone will come forward with new information, new evidence that could reopen the investigation and provide peace of mind for himself and justice for his son.
Next, the story of a mysterious bag of unopened letters dating back 40 years. They were written by GIs sailing off to battle in World War II and have yet to reach their lost loved ones.
Okay, so let's go to the Unsolved Mysteries wiki to see how it's gone. I do this, and all the time. I try to. There's times, I'll be honest, I forget, and I forget to do it. But anyway, Kurt McFall. Real name was Kurt Thomas McFall. Suspicious death. Location was San Francisco. The date was September 8th, 1984. The sad thing is, I think I've been alive longer than Kurt was, which is sad. Okay, let's check out the extra notes real quick. The case originally aired on February 5th, 1988. Special number 5 of Unsolved Mysteries was reprofiled by Dennis Farina. Fearing for his safety, Kurt's friend John was interviewed in silhouette. Sorry, I'm just not. I'm sorry, I cannot trust people who I cannot see. The San Francisco Police Department declined to be interviewed, and because of that, I think I can understand why. It's basically, they did what I'm sure they feel was a thorough investigation, and just to go out and talk about this again, it would not really help solve anything. It was featured on the Trail Went Cold podcast. It is not to be confused with the Kurt Sova case. This is also an interesting case, which I will cover in the near future. It is one of many cases attributed to satanic panic. See, there it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The satanic panic. Whenever something we didn't like had to be labeled as satanic panic. Or Satanism, basically. Of the 1980s. Other cases include the Son of Sam, Shane Stewart and Sally McNeil, Eric and Pam Allender, and the Michael Johnston and Rochelle Robinson case. David Labrava of Sons of Anarchy fame appears as a member of the cult wearing a black and white checkered shirt and sitting in the chant circle scene. See, that's one thing I loved about Unsolved Mysteries. I loved how they were able to get some actors who were not famous at the time, and it's nice to see where you can actually see them when they were originally starting out. Another famous instance, I think his name was Matthew McConaughey. He was actually one of the more gut punching cases of Unsolved Mysteries. The show incorrectly stated that Kurt disappeared on September 10th. Some sources state that Kurt's injuries were caused by a long, blunt object. His injuries could not have been caused by the fall. Tom received an anonymous call the day that after Kurt disappeared, and the caller said Kurt wanted to escape from a cult and feared for his life. So is this part of what they said was incorrectly stated? I'm a little bit confused about that. And results: Unsolved on January 1st, 2007. Karadžić passed away at the age of 58. I thought he was still alive. I thought the father was the one that died on this date. But then again, it's been a while since I last went to this wiki page. Okay, let's check out Kurt McFall at Find a Grave. Yeah, I've been alive. I'm double this poor kid's age. Oh my God. I cannot believe that. The fact that I'm double his age. Date of birth for Kurt McFall, December 9th, 1966. San Diego County, California. Date of death, September 8th, 1984. He was 17. Same location. He was buried at Oakmont Memorial Park in Lafayette County, Contra Costa County, California, USA. And sadly, it doesn't have like his family information here. Normally, it would have like his mom and dad. Okay, let's look at some photos here. Looks like this could have been, I would say, like middle school or high school. Same. Okay, I'm guessing that this could have been like a prom photo. And here we have his final resting place. Kurt Thomas McFall. And then it reads, I did it with class. It's kind of sad to see. Oops, sorry. Well, oh, wrong one. There it goes. It's kind of sad to see that is what ultimately became of Kurt McFall. I would like to think that you know, I in the perfect world, everybody lives to see a happy age. You know, they get to live a long, happy life. That's what I ultimately hope for. I can't even speak correctly right now. That's ultimately what I would wish for, is that people can live to see a happy old age, but that doesn't happen sometimes. And ultimately, what's even worse is that sometimes people just die, you know, from accidents. But that is it. That is Kurt McFall. In the next video, we will be covering case number 4, which has a happy ending, ladies and gentlemen. Do you like cases of lost loves? You're going to like the case of the undelivered World War II letters. Stay tuned.